Hello and welcome to YesterYear's Mac Edutainment, where today we're looking at a charming CD-ROM title from 1996 that declares on its box to teach advanced maths thinking skills to 8 to 12-year-olds. On paper, it sounds really boring. However, The Logical Journey of the Zoombinis is one of those rare titles that managed to make a series of educational concepts engaging, replayable, and timeless. I didn't think I'd find myself covering an edutainment title again. They're a tad tedious to trudge through once one has advanced beyond primary school, but when I got a good price for a box copy of Zoombinis and fired it up to be greeted with its familiar sights and sounds, I realised an exception needed to be made. After a bit of background reading on the title, I found out why. This logical stuff was added by developer and publishers Broderbund, who were of the opinion that having the game in the educational software section would maximise sales. Creators Chris Hancock and Scott Osterweil saw it more as an adventure game, despite it having been born from work done on a data visualization tool developed by Hancock called Tabletop, which then led to a version for kids called Tabletop Junior. Positive reactions from users of this software illustrated its potential, and the creators started getting ideas on how it could be made fun. Zoombinis was released in Europe a whole 9 months before North America, which is unusual. Some of the development was done over here, so that probably had something to do with it. Between those 9 months, it was polished up a bit, with the most significant change being the slowdown of the increase in difficulty. Some location names were also changed. This tweaked version is what I recorded footage of, as it's the one I got first, although I have since managed to acquire an original release, which we'll have a quick look through now. The box illustrates the efforts that the Broderbund team in the UK made to convince parents that this wasn't a game for wasting time on. Supports the UK curriculum is at the bottom, next to an award that they gave themselves. In here you have the CD in a jewel case, registration and troubleshooting leaflets, a fairly sizable manual that includes details of the tasks from the perspective of the player as well as the parent, and another booklet for parents with some Zoombini-themed activities to give children for when someone else needed to use the computer. The game was re-released a number of times over the following years, with tweaks added to keep it running on newer operating systems and updated box art to stop it looking dated. By 1999, the Logical Journey title had been dropped in favour of the simpler Maths Journey, although that change might have been UK only. There was also a second CD in these ones with bonus activities, such as things to print and colour in. Pop the CD in and the game will happily run off the disc, with the introductory cutscenes rolling upon startup. This tells a familiar story that we see in the real world fairly frequently. The Zoombinis make small, useful products, and are then persuaded by a large, sprawling organisation that they can make a lot of money with their support if they sell up to them. Upon doing so, they find themselves horrendously overworked with little to show for it, so a standard tale of the absorption of a startup. The talent subsequently gets fed up and does one, to form a new company without any meddling or quotas from a greedy bunch of suits. After the premise has been set out, the player is free to customise the Zoombinis that they wish to take with them. The blue potato that makes up the body is the only constant, with every combination of eyes, nose, hair and feet selectable. 2 of each type can be generated, which allows the player to artificially lower the difficulty by making a very similar looking party of 16, as most of the educational activities are based around the Zoombinis' features. Once this is all sorted, the atmosphere really cranks up. There is a certain ambience that is consistent through all the activities, which is delivered through background sound effects, as well as the admittedly very 90s sounding theme that can be heard in various arrangements between tasks. It's quite haunting. I don't think I've ever started talking about sound design so early in a video, but I feel it's particularly strong in this game. Difficulty in Zoombinis appears to be dynamic. If the player gets a full party of 16 through a section of 3 tasks, it knocks those activities up to the next level for the next playthrough. I've only just now experienced the harder modes in this replay for footage. As a kid, I never actually saw them. The vast majority of tasks are based around sending the Zoombinis to different bits of the screen depending on their appearance, so it's a good thing they're all blue. The first 2 are the most straightforward interpretations of this task, with a limited number of incorrect guesses occurring before the way forward becomes impassable. As the difficulty ramps up, the requirements get more particular. One of the better known activities comes third, where 3 abrasive logs request players to guess what they want on their pizza. Cheese is no more likely to be desired than any other topping, which from my point of view is insane.
Something on that I don't like.
As the difficulty ramps up, the machine gets an upgrade, and more options appear. I just cycle through all of them one by one and remember what each troll likes, although on the highest difficulty, this will result in a Zoombini getting smacked into next week, unless one of the trolls only wanted a single topping. I am unsure if there was a method to get all of them through all of the time, but the creators never intended for players to have a 100% success rate in order to teach getting over failure. The Zoombinis left behind go back to the island, where the player can try again. Why can't the trolls use the machine themselves? Why can't they properly communicate what they want? Well, I guess there wouldn't be an activity if they could manage that. I think I figured out why the middle one's skinnier than the others, though. The absolute scene if someone were to do that at your table. 2 rest points along the way are where Zoombinis who don't make it through subsequent tasks return back to. They happily sit in these small holes, which, I'm not on board with that at all. Parties can be customised with whoever is available, but 16 Zoombinis are always required to progress. The path splits in 2, so we'll look through the higher route first, which starts with another situation that could have been avoided with proper communication. This rather unpleasant captain has ideas in his head on where Zoombinis should sit, but it's up to the player to try and figure them out themselves. It starts out simple enough, but on higher difficulties, if one comes with a party of blue lumps with just a few outliers, it can be impossible to put some of them anywhere. The next task is a bit of a change of pace, where routes through a river of lily pads must be identified. As the difficulty increases, the player gains the abilities to move pads around, and then crabs start getting in the way. The final task is a lot simpler. Match Zoombinis by features along the hexagons, or brutalise them on others that seem to pack enough volts to hurl them into the air. I think the lower route is a tad more interesting. First up are the fleens. These are similar to Zoombinis in that they are all slightly different to one another, and all correspond to a member of the player's party. The player must use one of 16 as bait, and figure out through a bit of trial and error as to who corresponds to the 3 fleens that are obliviously sharing a tree branch with a big round wasp nest. As they jump off, it bothers the wasps, who eventually kick off and chase the aggressive fleens away. These guys are a tad more Mad Max than the Zoombinis. Trying to live one's life with 2 jet engines for legs must be hard. As difficulty increases, features will stop corresponding to the equivalent feature on the fleens. So in one example, Zoombini noses might instead relate to the fleen's hair. Did It Mention's Hotel is another split the Zoombini's up affair, adding more dimensions to the task as the difficulty increases. Some rooms then get boarded up to complicate things further. I'm not awfully fond of this one. I don't think it offers enough guesses. The activity afterwards, however, makes up for it. Mudball Wall was the first one I tried, as this was the game's demo that was circulated on magazine cover discs. The demo version has a few differences, with the platform gradually rising as correct bits of the wall are hit, in stark comparison to the significantly more slapstick solution present in the full game. The pattern of colours and shapes get more complicated as difficulty increases, and the wall eventually becomes a lot more elaborate. The final stretch can feel like a bit of a marathon in comparison to the others, although the first task is fairly simple. Arrange the Zoombinis in a line determined by their features. As this gets harder, the order gets more complicated with more features taken into account. Hints on the wall are also removed. Next is the crystal mines. If this one only took half as long as it does, it would have been one of my favourites. But instead, it goes on and becomes a massive slog. The objective here is to have the same Zoombini shine on both sides of the large crystal, in the centre of the screen. Get it wrong and they faceplant it. As the difficulty increases, intermediary slabs that alter the image must be accounted for. It can also occasionally do 2 at a time. The final task is a major highlight. Bubble Wander Abyss is the game's best implementation of sending the different looking Zoombinis along different routes. No guessing here though, the requirements are all laid out for the player to decipher, with switching junctions necessitating that the Zoombinis traverse the abyss in a specific order. The play area becomes quite remarkable once the difficulty is increased, and can really take some time to properly understand before diving in. What happens next? Well, that's it. The Zoombinis that made it through find a nice empty field and build a new town. This slowly grows as the player gets more and more Zoombinis through, and completes sections of the game on different difficulties, so it's not going to look like much when a player first sees it, but will eventually get quite busy. A single run-through will take under an hour, but with the solutions in constant flux and tasks changing as the difficulty goes up, playing the game doesn't feel like doing the same thing over and over again. The desire to see the town grow also helps motivate more playthroughs, and the Zoombinis themselves are very likeable, which helps too. I think the animation of the little beans plays a big part of this. There's not a huge number of frames, particularly when they're moving fast, but each one is expressive. Same goes for the noises they emit. Having them effectively start talking among themselves when the player isn't doing anything was a nice touch. The game's puzzle design is overall top-notch. A game like this, planned out by 2 people who have a genuine interest in designing these things to the best they can be, over a decent amount of time in some cases, as a number of them will have evolved from Tabletop Junior, compares starkly to a puzzle game that was ordered by some corporate entity for release at a set time, where all the tasks have to be simultaneously thought up quickly. This is what the sequels felt like. So, did the charm of the Zoombinis carry over into the 2015 remake? Visually, it's a lot more contemporary, and perhaps takes a bit of getting used to for returning players. Spend a bit of time with it though, and it becomes clear that the gameplay is completely intact. It's absolutely the same game, but to appeal to the next generation, it naturally had to look a bit better. Interestingly enough, the slight redesign to the Zoombinis themselves brought them closer to how Osterweil had originally squiggled them. All in all, the logical journey of the Zoombinis still holds up. It's a standout piece of fun edutainment with consistently good tasks that don't feel laborious. This is what educational titles should all strive to be like, but very few ever manage to achieve it. Play it for long enough, and it gets to a level of difficulty that can challenge anyone, not just kids, thanks to its Party of 16 based system that allows failure without actually punishing it. It's absolutely worth a try, and easy to do so with the existence of the remake. So with that, we'll wrap this edition of YY's MG up. For more content on Macintosh games, check out the rest of my channel, and subscribe to keep on top of new content as it drops. Thanks for watching then, and see you next time.
Something on that I don't like.
Is that all I get? Uh-oh.